All right, welcome to Growing Pains, a podcast where we learn from people who've been through a lot in growing companies, small and large. And today we're met with Matthew Mamet, who's been through major enterprise corporate changes as CPO or product lead and comes from an agency background and will be able to tell us especially about marketplaces and product in that category. So, Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Really happy to be here. This is great.
So you're out of Boston, which seems to, for some reason, just conjure up more travel marketplaces than any other location. Can you describe a bit about that as we get into this?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly two of the largest travel marketplaces in the world have had their beginnings here in the Boston area, and I've been very fortunate to be part of one of them. And it's a great community of folks interested in two-sided marketplaces here in the Boston area. Um, in a place in a region that otherwise gets a lot more focus around things like enterprise or fintech and crypto. So I don't know. Sometimes I like to think of it as Boston's best kept secret that we do have a number of thriving consumer businesses and marketplaces here.
Very cool. So one of the companies that you went to was Pearson, which is one of the biggest education companies in the world. I think about 100 million people have been through Pearson books at least. And you introduced a new product dedicated to education, and that was a marketplace. Can you describe a bit about that?
Sure, that was a very fun experience. We were part of a team that sat within their innovation group, and we were tasked with both defining and building and launching a new go-to-market approach for that, 100-year-old business. So Pearson at the time was pretty well focused on education and publishing, so traditional publishing. And so where we wanted to bring some of our that group of people had a lot of skills outside of traditional publishing and in particular in digital. So yes, we built Alley-Oop, which helps kids get a leg up on college. So the brand name Alley-Oop is about lifting folks up, and that was our mission, to help teens and their families be successful in college. And in order to do that, we learned a lot about college readiness, which at the time was being defined and curriculum around that being promoted. And it involved a lot more than just academics. It involved being successful at college. So what we did is we built a curriculum, a taxonomy, if you will, and mapped into that taxonomy learning content from all dimensions of this college readiness spectrum, some of which came from within the Pearson mothership, and some of it came without. So in that sense, the supply of our content was truly agnostic, and it mapped into this taxonomy that drove outcomes, right? So we would use the content and the curriculum that would drive the best outcomes for our students. And the way that we attracted our students was direct to consumer. We found them where they were, mostly on social media. At the time, it was Facebook. And so in this process of defining this brand and generating direct to consumer digital traffic acquisition, and we were able to kind of teach Pearson a little bit of how to be agile, how to be nimble, and how to be an innovator from within the space. And we had 100,000 kids by their own free will and volition signed up to using our platform. And that felt really good. We had a good impact on primarily folks who were the first generation college kids, folks who were kids who were going to college as the first in their family. So very important mission.
When you say first generation college kids, you mean kids that had come from an immigrant family into the United States and they were going to college for the first time, or was it kids who had come from underrepresented?
Yeah, both. So for folks that were putting their kids through college, but they themselves hadn't gone through college. College readiness is a challenge. It's hard to help map your son or daughter's path if you haven't walked that path. And the way that the ed system is kind of built is the resources that are available through the school are understaffed and largely tied up on folks who like really need the help. and more affluent, on the other end of the spectrum, more affluent populations generally have the ability to hire tutors and coaches. And so that
Or
middle of the
private
bell
school. I
curve,
think there was something about that a while ago.
yeah. So that middle of the bell curve student was the one that was often falling through the cracks. And with a little bit of help and support, we could lift them from, maybe going on to a 2-year program to a full 4-year program. So
Right.
that was our audience, and that was how we set out to help them.
Okay. So that must have been challenging for you to advocate within a large, very conservative, traditional publishing organization. Were you the leader of that, or how did you navigate that?
Yeah, it was not without its challenges. You're right. The leader of our division at the time came from within
Okay.
Pearson, and Patrick Supance was a big champion for not only this theme of college readiness in this at the time growing field, but also disruptive innovation that can come from within in a business that primarily had been acquiring um, these kinds of startups.
Hmm.
And because they were a large company, they became kind of like the exit path du jour of many ed tech startups,
Sure.
which meant that the revenue imperative was not as strong as the audience building imperative.
Okay.
And Pearson fell into the trap of being known as that big company that would come and scoop up every teacher's favorite tool and then slap a paywall in front of it.
Hmm.
So what Patrick realized is that's not sustainable for growth. We need to be able to build um, innovative new products and services from within and make
Hmm.
them not only usable and enjoyable at scale, but also valuable. So he was the head of that initiative. I helped out on driving the product growth and the product management of it.
So, they established, I mean, in that mandate of driving something within, that's like a CVC, a corporate venture studio kind of thing. Had, I mean, were there multiple products they were going to launch, or was this the product?
Yeah, this was the first of what was designed to be many.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so we would prove the model with alley um, and then one of the go forward paths after that was to have a team stay behind that would incubate more ideas.
Gotcha. And did you find, so you mentioned the paywall. What was the revenue model, and how successful? Did you try various revenue models that
We
didn't
did.
work?
So our primary user of the platform were middle school kids. And the
Okay.
reason for that is one of what the studies show and what the research indicated is one of the biggest indicators of graduating a 4-year program on time was a student's success in 8th grade algebra.
Okay.
And there were a number of reasons behind that that we don't have the full time to really explain and explore, but for many reasons that were backed by research and science, we really needed to get that relationship with the middle schooler first.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know about you, Sean, but I know I wasn't thinking about college in middle school. And so the challenge of providing a service that was very helpful to a middle schooler that they themselves would sign up for, um, yeah, that was a significant challenge.
Right.
And where we focused is through our customer discovery and just talking to middle school kids is they need homework help. They're
Right.
stuck a lot.
Yeah.
And so we we focused in on that as the way to hook students. And we leveraged from a product strategy and a monetization strategy, gamification. So
Okay.
as students signed up, they earned a set of points or coins that we called them, and they could spend those coins on things that were of interest to them.
Ah, good.
Which in the early days of their experience on the platform was homework help, and
Right.
we we would link them to a virtual tutor to help them with their homework. And we modeled our
You say a
economy.
virtual tutor, you mean someone who's remotely tutoring a human, or do you mean an algorithm?
Former at the
Okay.
time. We're talking about 2009, 2010, I think
Okay.
here. So
Yeah.
ChatGPT had not yet been
No, no, yeah, yeah, long way from
not
that.
yet been born. Um, but a group of tutors who would connect to them through a Zoom-like experience and help them with their homework.
Mhm.
They would earn their coins by going on missions that help them understand their future prospects, uh, stuff that kids wouldn't normally do on their own. So think personality assessments, career exploration services, college program, description services.
Mm.
So educating themselves about this path that we wanted them to walk and fall in love with wanting to walk that. And they
Right.
would spend those coins in the early days of their involvement in the platform. They would plow those coins right back to homework help. And
Okay.
so we modeled our economy out so that could only that system could only last so long until there was just not enough missions for them to go on to satisfy their homework help desires. And
Yeah.
that's when we prompted them to connect their parent onto the platform and bring their wallet and
AKA
replenish.
their credit card. Yeah, yeah.
And so our hypothesis at the time was, what parent wouldn't like to get an email saying your son or daughter has been hard at work, learning about college, career, and doing better at algebra for the past 6, 7, 8 weeks. Would
Yeah.
you like to help them go faster with more support? So that was those were our strategies around building, getting that hook
Yeah.
for our users, developing that hook, and then bringing on the path to monetization and profitability.
Nice. Nice. So it sounds like a not only a virtuous product, but also it sounds like it had some success with 100,000 users. What happened to it?
Yeah, um, it was a virtuous product, and many of us who were part of that team were there for a reason. I myself am the first kid in my family to graduate college, so I know what it's like. And there were a few others in the same kind of boat. And yes, we did have 100,000 kids signed up and using the platform. Where things kind of ran sideways was that corporate sponsor who was the CEO of Pearson Global. Marjorie retired, and
Oh,
John Fallon took the seat, and John pointed the business in a pretty different direction. And
okay.
so I think the growing pain there, or the lesson that I learned, anyways, is that being that small, scrappy startup inside of a very large company comes with some protections, and but it also comes with some stakeholders that need to be uh, appeased. And if we're
Right.
not fully in control of your destiny like a private company is, we were we were um, we were attached to P&L process, budgeting processes.
Right.
So that was not a perfect scenario if you want to be an innovator. But another thing I've learned is not many scenarios are. And I've done a bunch of them. I've done the bootstrapped two guys in a garage thing, lots of control
Hmm.
there. You're
Yeah.
definitely in control of your destiny. But for the most part, in the early days, you're staring at the phone, hoping that anyone will call you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really have a lack of resources compared to some other models. And I've been part of venture-backed startups as well, and they have their own pros and cons. And so it's important to understand, if you're interested in joining or leading one of these types of organizations, what environment you're willing and wanting to navigate, because they all come with challenges that you have to navigate, as you mentioned at the top of the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And a new CEO definitely wants to put his or her stamp on the company. And you can anticipate drastic changes in experimental departments if they don't align. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
interesting. So from there
Sean
to trip.
had gone through the Pearson network as growing their international business. So you can probably guess at what focus he brought to the organization writ large when he took the seat.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So then from there to TripAdvisor, another larger organization, well
Yeah,
established as
that
I would describe it, and I still thought until I really read your um, your resume and LinkedIn, I always kept thinking of it as a Yelp of travel. And clearly you introduced a product that made it completely different. So tell me about how you got in and what happened when you delivered on that.
Yeah, going to TripAdvisor was a great move. I had at the time in my career established myself as a product leader, started to fall in love with marketplace businesses, but hadn't quite seen from the inside anyways, a very successful marketplace. And so TripAdvisor is all those things. When I joined there in 2013-ish, um, world's largest travel site by traffic, hands down. 30 some odd countries, 60 some odd languages, excuse me, reverse that. And primarily known as a place to go and read hotel reviews.
Hmm.
What's it really like to stay at that hotel? That was how TripAdvisor, that was the first kind of product that found successful product market fit. And at the time, the way they monetized that traffic was through pop-up ads. So as a traveler was reading about a review, they say, "Oh, this place looks great. I wonder how much it costs to stay here." They would click a singular button called check the prices, check prices. And that would spawn a window to a website that was either the hotel's website or an online travel agency, like say Expedia, that would show the rates for that particular hotel. And that was the page that the traveler would enter their credit card and book the hotel. And each one of those pop-ups was a monetization event for Trip. That was how they made their money. And not from a product and UX perspective, you can guess what happened in that model, right? As the global footprint got achieved, and pretty much every single hotel and B&B and hostel in the
Yeah.
world was
Everyone with their great websites and their
yeah
booking
was
engines.
on TripAdvisor. There was now only kind of one-ish vector left with which to drive revenue growth, was add more pop-ups. So you can book on Expedia, you can book on Booking.com, Priceline, Agoda, you name it. And that was a terrible, at the time, that was seen to be like, wow, we've really kind of created a terrible user experience.
Right.
And the way that I actually got that particular job was obviously I was looking as a result of things winding down at LAU, but I had an opportunity to meet the global head of product at TripAdvisor. And I was kind of complaining to him. I was like, I can't quite see myself working at a place where my next greatest innovation would be what? Opening the ninth pop-up window.
Yeah.
I was coming off this very mission driven, like purposeful startup. And so Adam said, "Okay, smart guy, how'd you like to be part of the team that's fixing that?" And so he definitely knew how to speak to get me motivated and to kind of speak to my needs. And so I jumped at the challenge to join into the core product team of this very large, at the time, $1 billion a year in revenue coming out of
Wow.
pop-ups, basically.
Wow. Billion.
And we moved that model to price meta search. So by building API connections behind the scenes into all of those sites, we now enable the traveler to just give us their check-in and checkout date, and would go off and search all of those sites and present the rates. So that's a much better user experience. Of course, our shoppers really loved that. It changed the game for our suppliers, and that was the most difficult part of our switch to price meta search.
I bet.
The large sophisticated booking sites like Expedia et al. Found some value in generating relationships with travelers, even at that kind of surface level of where one of many pop-ups. They'd be able to open the page, drop a cookie, start retargeting, and leverage their sophistication in digital marketing to get that user to come back.
Hmm.
We 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 fundamentally changed the amount of visitors they would get, because now there's a step in between the traveler and going to Expedia. They now have to click the Expedia button that says it's $100 a night to stay at this hotel. And so you can imagine that our largest advertisers were like, how are we going to navigate this new model if and when it rolls out at scale? And we worked very closely with them to show through data that yes, while your number of visitors goes down, the number of transactions that we will create for you, the conversion rate of those visitors goes way up to the point where you're getting the same revenue at far less cost,
Depending on how competitive their offering was.
depending on how competitive their offering is.
Okay.
And a lot of um, a lot of data science went into the ranking of those orders, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Uh, and a lot of testing went into the visual display of those offers, so that
Hmm.
we could um, bend the click curve in certain cases
Oh,
towards the
really?
options that
Towards an
were
advertiser or towards against the
right
algorithm?
for travelers, right?
It's okay.
So, for example, it was an auction model. If you wanted to get towards the top, you were incentivized to pay for premium slot.
Okay.
But what we didn't want to do was lose sight of the fact that these are travelers who come to our site to plan and compare prices, but have the very best trip.
Sure.
And so there's a reason why people don't pick the cheapest booking engine. And there's a
Right.
reason why they don't pick the cheapest hotel in say, New York City.
Totally.
Uh, so price is a factor.
Hmm.
It is not the factor.
Right. Right. Interesting. Very interesting. So I mean, I can see the revenue. So yeah, I'm assuming you were getting a percentage of transaction as a result of that. Pop-up
So
ad.
at that time, when we moved to price meta search, we were still in a click-based revenue model. So
Okay.
instead of a pop-up window generating a small CPC, we now had a click event that generated a slightly larger CPC.
Okay. So it wasn't a percentage of revenue. And I mean, it sounds like it was Kayak underneath. And then from like almost as if you had built another Kayak and that distributed to the various vendors. Is that right?
Yeah, certainly Kayak was the first to do price meta search
Yeah.
and did it successfully. And so we were absolutely inspired by models that work.
Very well said. And that's great. So, and that obviously has been hugely successful. And has it changed since?
So yes, within my time period of being at Trip, we did move to start experimenting with more of an e-commerce model.
Hmm.
So again, continuing to move down, vertically integrate with our booking sites to move down into that now room selection part of the hotel
Mm.
booking process, and capturing the credit card on our TripAdvisor's our site and
Mm.
passing that credit card along to the booking site. So
Mm.
really creating a facilitated e-commerce or facilitated transaction where we wouldn't have to open any pop-up windows or new windows. We would keep the visitor in that single session, in that same
Environment.
mobile or desktop experience without confusing them with different brands and pages.
Mm.
And we would complete the transaction on behalf of the booking site while on the TripAdvisor site or app. And that was a new model for not just TripAdvisor, but the whole hotel industry. Kayak had experimented with an assisted book process, but Trip was the one that brought it to a larger scale.
Mm.
And we were not an online travel agency. All the online travel agencies, the merchant of record is them. You're doing business with Expedia, and then
Yeah.
Expedia has business relationships with hotels.
Yeah.
If you want to change or cancel your hotel booking, you call Expedia. With us, we were helping facilitate the transaction for the hotel and or the booking site. Um, and so we were somewhere in the middle. At the time, industry experts were referring to us as an OTA light model.
Yeah. 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 And I like how you referred to it as going from the Yelp to the Amazon of booking.
Yeah, and so I was really focused on that hotel segment, but TripAdvisor and the TripAdvisor Media Group, which is the parent company, was investing in growing all of its travel related products. So tours and attractions through an acquisition, restaurant bookings also through acquisition. Just to name a few, flights was another core business. So all the things that you would need to plan compare prices, but also have experienced the very best trip,
Hmm.
now had reviews, so you could read reviews about it. It had price comparison through metasearch, but it also had that ability to book it directly on the TripAdvisor app. And so that platform that we built for hotel booking had been extended and made available to all of those products, so that we would, yes, start to become a place where you are doing transactions and making those bookings kind of like an Amazon for travel,
Nice.
and not just a place that refers you off to other sites for commerce.
I'm curious, did you see a measurable reduction in drop off in the booking? Because you would have seen the follow through to, well, you would only seen the pop up, I guess. You wouldn't have seen whether they transacted post pop up. So, was there a higher, theoretically, it makes sense, user experience much more unified, much more controlled. I'm going to go through that whole experience. If I go off to another site and I don't like the UX of it, I might not go.
Right, right. Yeah, it was a challenge because we were comparing um, the conversion path of, in the case of Instant Book, an experience we controlled
Hmm.
versus the conversion path that we didn't control. But we did have round trip data to some degree. Uh, so we had some insight into the conversion path. It was also difficult to compare a CPC model to a rev share model. So this new facilitated commerce model that I mentioned, that did move us more towards a rev share model, which is
Hmm.
different than the CPC model. We needed to build out a model that would enable those two things to be compared more like apples to apples,
Yeah,
uh, and that wasn't always easy.
I'm sure.
But I would say the biggest challenge for that particular product launch was some of our bigger customers, those brands that I mentioned on those OTA sites, were like, you know what, we don't really need heads in beds. What we really need is travelers. That's what we see the value of TripAdvisor is, giving us relationships with travelers that we can um, cross sell them to a different hotel where we make more money, or
Ah,
upsell them
okay.
to a rental car to come with their. So that OTA segment saw this new product as less desirable than the click off Meta product, whereas the hotels themselves saw this as a much more desirable product,
Hmm.
uh, because that's all that a large hotel chain is in many ways very similar to a real estate type company, where they're trying to figure out how to develop land and generate revenue out of it. And the hotel part of it is not nearly the only way they do that. Obviously, convention centers and stuff like that really drive a lot of revenue. So to
Hmm.
them, to have a at scale global access to travelers who would just book hotels on their booking platform on their paper was quite interesting to them. And so we had OTAs on one side, hotels on the other, and TripAdvisor in the middle, trying to facilitate more of a happy ecosystem. And at times that was challenging.
And how did you assuage the OTAs?
I think ultimately, the short answer is we didn't.
Yeah.
The product started to be picked up by hotels, but not picked up by OTAs, at least in ways that we could generate meaningful value for the TripAdvisor business. And so a
Hmm.
decision had to be made on where we would go.
A
Uh,
big bet.
it was a big bet, and hindsight's always 2020. And the part that I think we saw a little less was on the other side of our marketplace, Google entering into hotel booking directly. So things like Hotel Finder and Hotel Booking Engine. So now we had kind of two problems at the time. We
Hmm.
had we had a traveler growth problem because our travelers were now being siphoned off by Google, and
Hmm.
we had this OTA versus hotels, frenemy type relationship on the supply side. So
Right.
the hotel business became under significant external threat at that time.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, that's a good segue. I was gonna get to that question later, but I'm gonna ask it now. I mean, Google and its whole model around SEO and click is potentially going to be challenged by OpenAI and and moving from just a more text-based solution to actually clickable solutions. How do you think that's going to impact their model, what you've done in marketplaces, especially as it relates to travel?
I think the rise of what we're seeing in AI and LLMs, large language models, is providing Google the most significant threat that it has ever seen to its core business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and their core business of search is their cash cow. They have many other products. Not many of them have come from Google,
Mm-hmm.
inside Google, and seen success at the
Mm-hmm.
certainly not close to the scale of search. YouTube
Mm-hmm.
is number two. YouTube's an acquisition. And so if that search cash cow really starts to be continues to be challenged in the way that it has been, it's going to make for a very interesting next 5 years or so for any business that relies on traffic from Google.
Yeah,
The the ability for a shopper or a consumer to go to chatgpt.com or any one of these and get their answer, their question asked and their answer answered without having to click off is it's big. And Google's attempts to keep the searcher on their pages with their own AI, they're not gone as smoothly as I think they would like.
definitely not. Yeah.
Probably heard some of the more extreme horror stories of, adding glue to your pizza to,
Yeah, eating
yeah,
rocks on your
yeah.
pizza.
And when it comes to things that Google classifies as your money or your life type searches, the types of searches that really, really matter. Am I
Mm.
sick? Should I see a doctor? Should I invest in this fund or that fund? Um, there is no ability to be wrong sometimes. You got to be right.
Mm-hmm.
And their approach right now has been to partner with a very, very large community in Reddit and use that to train their AI approach. But it's been rocky in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
So I think where that ends after 5 years from now, I can't, I won't be one of those people who pretends to know. I don't think we know.
No.
Uh, but what I will say about how to navigate a marketplace business or an SEO driven business through this period is it'll be very important to have authority and be right, not just creating content that can be summarized from other sources of content, uh, like using a chatbot to do book reports on the internet and post blog posts. That will be less effective. But to have true editorial, to have true points of view, and to be generating net new information and be the source of that will be key. And video will probably play a large role in that,
Mm.
community as well. So if you're leaning into those three vectors, I think there's a path forward for generating continual traffic from Google to Google SERPs to your business. But it's got to be good. Quality has to be top, um, and can't be easily summarized by either Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever. So
Right.
those are the things that we're leaning into here at EnergySage.
Okay. Well, let's talk about EnergySage, another virtuous marketplace. Tell us a bit about the company and what your role is and what your challenges are.
Yeah, thanks. I love EnergySage. EnergySage historically has been a marketplace to help residents go solar and put solar panels on the house.
It's been around for a
And
while, right?
it's been around for a bit, 10, 12 years. In our most recent 2, 3 years, we've really, through partnership with Schneider Electric, opened up our aperture to go wide and be a place where um, residents can come and not only learn and get matched to an installer to help them with their solar decision, but also the consumption of the electricity that they create from that solar. So think electric heating, electric hot water, electric cooling, electric stove and cooking, all things electric to further um, switch from carbon-based fuels to now electricity, which is easier to produce clean energy, whether it's a residential system that you yourself are installing, or from the utility companies that are investing in renewable energy sources to power, to be the source of energy that they're selling to their customers. And so in many ways, I see this as the most important mission for anyone to be on right now, beating back the effects of climate change.
Yeah.
Um, and and so it's a fun, new, and vastly important space to be in. We believe it's only going to get bigger as time marches on and climate change becomes more and more real. And we're helping to create this market and satisfy people who are interested in it by connecting them to installers who can get the job done at a good price.
Hmm. And that's the missing piece, right? I mean, a lot of people want to do solar, but they don't know which panel to get. How much is it going to cost to install? Do I get a battery to store my solar? Do I put it back into the grid? So you're providing information and content around all that?
Information, content, and live human support. It's incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
It's it's all of those questions plus a whole bunch more. What kind of inverter? And one of the key questions beyond just the hardware and the price is, if I want to go on this, if I'm a resident, if I'm a household member, and I want to go on this journey and see it through to conclusion,
Hmm.
these are these are like home improvement projects, and there are a series of home improvement projects. And
Hmm.
so, what do I want to tackle this year, next year? What do I want to wait for 3 or 4 years out while I, um, you know, build up the savings to pay for the next step? And please help me to make sure I'm making all the right decisions so that when it is 5, 6 years from now and I'm ready to move on to that particular next step, I don't look back and say, oops, I installed the wrong inverter. And now it's
It doesn't connect.
interoperability of the equipment has painted me into a box that I don't like or want to be in. And so our energy advisors are the people who sit over the top of our digital content and digital recommendation experience
Hmm.
to really provide guidance and support for our shoppers so that they don't um, make a decision that they'll regret. In our research with folks who are interested in going solar, nobody ever really decides to not go solar ever. What they do decide is, I'll do it later. The
Hmm.
project's too big right now. It's too expensive. It's too scary. I'll put a pin in it. I'll do it later. So helping our solar shoppers get to the point where they feel confident enough to say, yeah, I can do this. I can start it now with this part of the project. And I will get, as a result of that, I will get some benefit. Financial benefit is the primary kind of benefit you'll get by going solar. Payback periods are usually like 5 years on a 20-year system. So
Hmm.
15 years of profit after that first 5 years. And
If
then,
you
yeah,
scale.
then I can do this. And I know that someone who's going to guide me through it. So I think those are some of the things that, from a shopper experience perspective, those are the problems we're trying to help solve.
Okay, that's interesting because that goes from one extreme to the other in terms of product, and from my understanding. So you're going to the atomic level of whether you click on a pop-up or click on a booking or a search result engine, which is really the atomic piece of a user experience in its path towards getting a product, to holistically educating a customer about products and then guiding them through with services to the best decision and then having a marketplace. That's a pretty big change in product scope.
Sure.
What is I mean, you're relatively new at this company, right? How long has it been?
Couple of years now. Yep.
Well, it's been a couple of years. Okay. So what did you think when you looked at it? What did you think was the first area of focus to get? And what is your outcome that you're trying to achieve? Like, is
Yeah.
it focus on education, focus on product, focus on marketplace experience? What?
So comparing an experience at a TripAdvisor, which saw so much phenomenal success at a global scale. And yes,
Hmm.
I came in right in the middle of that whole story, and had a piece of the overall puzzle. It was an important piece, and I loved it, but
Hmm.
it was quite a large experience, quite a large set of brands, and I was focused on one area.
But and I'm not discounting that piece. I mean, if you
Sure.
messed up that piece, that's a lot of money in that company. So
Yeah.
it's
Steve
big
and I
company,
got
big
to know each
problem.
other really, really well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, so totally get it. But yes, now the focus is building the machine, building the platform, and the talent around that, like the organization,
Mhm.
to accomplish this mission at scale,
Mhm.
uh, and architectures around that as well from a technology perspective. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, we're asking a lot more of the platform that had been built. Uh,
Mhm.
and brand and UX also had to change. So it has been moving this. Obviously, I've been part of a team. It's not just Matthew Mamet comes in and says, "This is what we got to do, guys." Um, there were a few of us who had experience in marketplaces and scaling businesses who kind of came into functional roles all at similar same times. We have some TripAdvisor people here. We have some Kayak people here.
Okay.
Uh, so the founders said, "Hey, if this is the path we're going to go on, yeah, there are some places that have done this, and we could do it the hard way, which is figure it out ourselves, or we could find folks who have seen this type of success and have some plays in a playbook that could potentially be deployed here at EnergySage." And so
Mhm.
that was the the foundation for bringing me on board. I was very excited to, because I felt like I know this business type of business really, really well, and the mission and the people that I've already mentioned made it a no-brainer for me.
Mhm.
But there was a lot to do to turn, and continues to be, to quote unquote turn this into TripAdvisor.
Mhm.
I would also venture to say that that's probably not a very realistic uh, mission. Uh, TripAdvisor is, and some of these largest sites, they're unique, and the conditions under which they were crafted and born just aren't going to be replicated in the exact same way ever again. Um,
Well, decentralized power is becoming more and more popular. It's a very strong trend, and risk of power failure is obviously pandemically increasing with
yep.
weather incidents. So I don't know. You might be riding a good wave regardless.
Certainly, there are conditions that provide massive tailwinds to
Hmm.
this segment's growth. Absolutely.
Hmm.
I would say they're very different than the ones that existed when TripAdvisor was building at first a hotel directory site for, I think, Lycos or something, and then
Right.
little old Google, which at the time was a new innovative product, like, hey, we should do search instead. And uh, Steve and team were smart, very smart enough to dive in very deeply into the search revolution that Google started, and then the rest, as they say, is history.
Hmm.
Here at EnergySage, the challenge is one of the challenges. I don't know if it's the top one, but it's certainly one that me and my peers think about a lot, is what plays from our playbook are the ones that we should deploy to EnergySage, and what are the plays that we should leave behind.
Hmm.
There is no silver bullet to scaling a marketplace. It's highly contextual, as you were just saying. And so pulling in all of these smart people with lots of experience building very successful marketplace businesses, and then mapping the path forward for EnergySage, has been one that requires um, sure, experience and smarts and great networks, but also a lot of humility, um, because we're we're applying them to a space that does not have a Kayak or a TripAdvisor for home energy yet, and
Well,
that's
and
what
it's
we need to be.
like you said, much bigger ticket item.
And much bigger ticket item.
If you lose on your whole solar system, it's lots of money. If you lose on a bad night at a hotel, it's no big deal.
Um, Much more considered purchase, you're right,
Yeah.
around things that people don't really know what the heck they are. Everyone knows what a hotel room is, what you can
Right.
expect to get, and how to evaluate whether your hotel room was good or bad. Same with
100%.
the flight and a restaurant, and going on a tour.
Hmm.
Uh, did I get the very best photovoltaic panel with inverter and grid controller? What? What do I even want those things? Is those the things I want, or do I want something else? So in many ways, the challenge of our content team is also to explain the space, explain what it is and why you even want it,
Mm-hmm.
as much as it is to help people in an active shopping journey do their vetting and price comparison and making choices around some of these pieces of equipment, hardware brands that they want to be associated with and choose, and the people they're going to invite into their home and onto their roof to, I mean, let's face it, they're going to be screwing holes in the roof, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, now we're talking about affecting potentially your other largest and probably much larger investment that you've made.
Mm-hmm.
So much more considered purchase, many variables, and the challenge of getting it wrong, yeah, is not a. We need to get it right for all shoppers. You you place that inside an industry that has traditionally been dominated by what's called solar bros, a lot of door knockers, a lot of aggressive sales cycle. And you have a lot of folks who are coming into this already with apprehension, right? It's like I heard someone was jumping over the hedges at my neighbor's house and peeking into the kitchen, trying to get their attention to, hey, can I interest you in a solar system?
Wow.
These highly aggressive tactics by historically some of the larger installers have created, the space with which EnergySage was born to combat against.
Right.
So we have an important mission, not just to help people go solar, but to be consumer first, to
Mm-hmm.
give the objective information as best we see it towards shoppers so they can make the very best decision for them.
Mm-hmm.
Only connect them into equipment that's reputable to installers that are reputable. And so unlike a TripAdvisor, where you can, if you really want to, you can book the cheapest hotel in New York City. That's what you want. Um, our our platform, because of what you just said, realizes that pointing someone into a bad relationship with an installer just to save a few bucks on the upfront is not what we stand for, and it won't be helpful to anyone in the long run. So
Right.
we do have a stricter bar to the installers and the options that we allow onto our platform.
Right. Okay. So, um, I could go deep on that, on how you actually rank, and because it's always the weakest link, right? Some installer, the people don't show up that day, they get somebody off the street, and next thing you know, you got leaky roof, and there goes your reputational capital. Um, Actually, I may as well, now that I've stated that, why don't we answer that question? How do you address that? Because that's
You know,
way out of your control as a booking, as a, you know, marketplace.
so we do have a reviews and a rating system for
Hmm.
our installers, and we we leverage that, and so folks will be aware of what installers' recent performance is.
Hmm.
But we don't allow installers on to the platform who are brand new anyways, or have already generated unfavorable reviews on other platforms. And so the vetting process, not everyone who wants to buy leads from us, we allow that. We
Okay.
have a checklist and a screening process um, that makes sure we're only getting people who will do well on our platform.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. So looking at the size of the investment, the consumer has to make, the amount of information they have to gather before they can make a reasonable choice. We're kind of in the same boat. We want people to have a good experience when they're choosing an outsourcing agency, and we have a marketplace for that. And we're moving from a very service-based product experience to a product-based experience. We talked about this. I said we always talk about ourselves as being a travel agent today, and we're going to be Expedia, or I should say TripAdvisor. Yeah, where it's
Of course.
DIY.
Yeah.
Um, where are you on that spectrum? Because, product-led sales, product-led growth, these are terms that have been bandied about ever since, especially COVID, it became hugely popular. And it does provide scalability, obviously. Where are you on that spectrum of how much hand-holding versus DIY?
We have segments of our shopper population that fall neatly into each of those camps. And I think a part of that has a lot to do with this industry, which is 10 years ago didn't really exist at scale. And the people who were interested were very, very early innovative people and early adopters. And they wanted to do it by themselves. And they wanted to see the tech specs. They wanted to compare voltage and amperage um, and probably came from that field, right, of electrical engineering or etc. And so in the early days of this particular product's existence, we had to cater to the audience that we had, and that was the do-it-yourself group. And our product experience at times kind of looked like the Wikipedia of solar panels. Everything you'd ever
Right.
want to know about solar panels.
Right. Right.
As solar adoption grows and here in the US, regulation has been favorable at the federal level to spur growth around solar and other forms of home electrification. We're moving up the adoption curve. And now we're encountering that you know, early majority, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And what they want is like, can't someone just do this for me? I saw
Mm-hmm.
my neighbors doing it and they're happy. We talked about it over the barbecue.
Right.
Um, but I'm living a pretty busy life here, doing all kinds of stuff. And this seems hard and complicated. So it would be ideal if someone could just do this for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so depending on which segment of our target market you fall into, we're building and investing in pathways to give those particular segments of users what the experience that they're asking for. And so a more guided, more self-service, a white glove type experience is what a larger percentage of our newer audience is looking for as compared to our original audience.
Okay. And are you trying to, I guess, accelerate that process? And yeah, okay.
That's where some of our biggest R&D is right now.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And is video or written content the number one click through?
I think right now we have a lot more written than we do video, so it's
Mm-hmm.
generating the quantities.
Mm-hmm.
But as I mentioned earlier, mastering video for acquisition is really a focus for our digital teams right now.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So I expect that to change that percentage to change pretty quickly.
Right. Right. So then let me get back to like I said, a more general question and pick anything you want out of this, nothing to do with what maybe necessarily what we've said. What would you say is the biggest challenge as the product lead for you at EnergySage?
Hmm. It's driving alignment and focus. I think
Oh,
that's
really?
probably
Okay. Internal.
I think that's probably true of many heads of product or CPOs that are in scaling businesses. There's a bunch of different directions we could go in, but we're not at the size and scale where we could place all the bets all the time.
Gotcha.
Um, and we need to what I think oftentimes I find myself repeating a quote that was attributed to Steve Jobs, which is, there's a lot of good ideas out there. Everyone has good ideas. The challenge, I think, for me is helping to build an organization that can quickly identify the great ideas and then focus on the great ideas through to completion. Otherwise, you're, running the risk of like a peanut butter spreading your peanut butter too thin strategy. Sometimes I refer to that as the, plant 1,000 flowers and see which ones bloom,
Mm-hmm.
which some organizations do and are successful with. I've not seen it be successful. It creates a bit of thrash at times, and that's the type of scenario where you're most likely to find out that there's a different team somewhere in your own company that's working on the same thing and same mission that you are. And so incentives get all misaligned at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But EnergySage is a small company still. We're not a global footprint. We're available in 100% of the United States, every single state. So that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And our organization is, you know, not set up to tackle the same number of initiatives with the same depth and fervor as a TripAdvisor, let's say.
Right, right, right.
So building that alignment when folks are coming in the room with like, I got a great idea, got a good idea. We should do this. Um, it's more than just words. It's also research. It's also data. It's also experimentation. It's
Hmm.
also about testing the good idea before you invest wholly behind it. And that part can be easier, right? People start to see like, okay, cool, there's a path for my idea to move forward. But the number one biggest challenge within that driving alignment and focus is stopping an idea. That's really hard.
Right.
So we did the thing, we put it on a small footprint, and we got some sales, but not enough. Or we got some
Yeah.
happy customers, but not enough.
Right.
Um, and that involves realigning the organization around a stopping or a pausing of a thing. And that's hard when you're building teams that are really passionate about success and growth, and they put their heart and soul in things, and
Right.
they want things to be successful all the time, 100%
Right.
of the time.
Right. Right. So, and I know we're running out of time, but it's an interesting conversation about the dynamic internally. Are you the key filter to the engineering team, or is engineering team coming up with their own ideas? I know that sales and marketing always come up with ideas, and the CEO probably as well. What's you don't have to be specific about this, but
Yeah.
in general, the dynamic that you've seen and what works best.
Well, good ideas can come from anywhere. Great ideas can come from anywhere.
Sure.
And so we foster an environment where if people have ideas, they should speak up. And as part of our, within the R&D org, between engineering, product management, and UX, we create space for innovation every quarter. We create a
Mhm.
innovation period,
Okay.
a week or so, um, where folks can test something or research something. And that is probably one of the bigger vectors for people coming up with an idea. Like, hey, I know we're challenged to get customers to trust us, and the product team has put together X, Y, and Z as the roadmap of success, but I want to do alpha because I think that's a
Right.
better idea. And so I
Right.
took my innovation week this quarter and I ran a test, built a prototype, and this is what I found. And so that presentation of the demo day of the innovation ideas is a big part of ensuring that there is no top down from me or others kind of motion that squelches innovation to the point where what I want to avoid at all costs is turning into a feature factory, right?
Right.
The
Right.
organization is saying like, okay, boss, what should we build next? Our organization, our quarterly planning is built around outcomes, KPIs that we want our teams to 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 improve. And yes, our roadmap is about those things, and that's how our roadmap success or failure is measured. And then layered into that is a growth and innovation week, but also a growth and innovation team separate from core product. We have a smaller team that has um, a wider latitude and remit to move fast and break things. So
Nice.
all of that gets thrown in the pot every quarter. What did we learn this quarter, whether through our longer lived, bigger bets, or whatever the heck those crazy, folks over in growth and innovation were cooking up? What did we learn? Let's share
Right.
that learning in a super transparent way, and then choose what we're going to do next as an R&D organization that supports what our business goals are for that particular time period.
Nice. So I
It's
like
got to be
that.
both.
So it's kind of like the 20% Google Friday, work on something different. In your case, it's a solid week, or is it distributed, or it doesn't matter
Yeah,
that it's every quarter?
we've kept it to a week every quarter.
I like that.
We do ask a lot of our teams because we have a huge mission, as I've talked about. We're expanding horizontally in categories. We're re-architecting some of our older monoliths, and we're moving down, integrating deeper um, into the value chain. So there's a lot to do. Uh,
Hmm.
and at the end of every quarter, if it feels like a sprint, what do you do in real life? At the end of a race, you rest. And part
Yeah.
of resting is not just going on vacation and taking time off, although we want to make sure everyone's doing that too, but it's also using your brain in a different way. And so innovation is equal parts recovery as it is an opportunity to source new ideas that could be better than the ones we've got.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it. Well, listen, Matthew, you've been very generous with your time. I appreciate you answering all these questions, and it's been a really good session for me, and I'm sure for our audience. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks for having me on the show, Sean.
And we'll have a link to EnergySage on the web, and it's energysage.com.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just, here we go.